Hello and welcome to July the 8th of the year 2021, the year that we hope the pandemic will leave us. But Tom Price and I will continue to be here, we hope. Now, Tom, it's been said that what's the matter with us old folks? Really, why are we so concerned about what's going on in our city? Why are we taking the time? Because some of us, well, all of us, in truth, are not going to be around forever. And a lot of the stuff that's being talked about is going to be here long after we're gone. So why are we concerned?
Well, part of it is that we have the time, but more importantly, we were raised with a set of ethics and integrity that seems to be disappearing from our society. We're hanging on to those ethics and integrity while others appear to be throwing them in the trash in order to get what they think we need in the future.
Now, we've been raised, as you say there, in a different time. And a lot of us had parents who went through the Depression and a very severe economic challenges. And now it appears that we have, with respect to some of the projects that are being considered in the city of Greater Sudbury, the attitude of, well, let's just get it done. I mean, it's only money. And yet it seems like we're ignoring some of the aspects that really should be looked at with regards to spending money and looking at the responsibilities that we have with respect to our community and its actual needs. Is that where you're coming from?
Primarily, yes. Every society, in fact, there was a very good article in the paper just this last week about the huge role that park space in high density areas plays in the health of a high density community. And it was quite a good article. And the individual that wrote it was claiming that the role of the park in that high density area is a massive influence on the health of the people. Mm-hmm. And it is, both mentally and physically. So if we're looking to have a healthy and both mentally and physically healthy future for our descendants, we need to pay attention to these things now. Because if we abandon them, their future is not as bright.
Mm-hmm. Now, in Sudbury at the present time, there's a lot of concern. There's been letters to the editor, the comments in the media with respect to what has been called the big projects. And this would be the KED and, of course, the downtown junction projects, junctions east and west. And really, I don't think we should really get into it. We do have a website called friendlysudbury.ca where we've looked at the pros and cons, especially with respect to the KED. But one of the main concerns, and we're going to get into what I have described as something of a witch hunt with respect to some of our councillors and indeed private citizens going on for a number of years, and something else coming up relatively soon at council with respect to one of our councillors, Jerry Montpellier, a very, very popular councillor who has been, as I mentioned, the word witch hunt, has been attacked with respect to some of the comments he made, which his constituents feel are quite valid, and some other members of the community as well. We'll talk about that in just a minute. But with respect to the KED, now it seems to be centered around the aspect that the mayor had indicated that there would be some full disclosure, if you will, with respect to all the concerns and all the factors surrounding the KED, the Kingsway Entertainment District, and that perhaps these were not brought forward in a recent meeting. And indeed, a consultant's report seems to have been directed with respect to its terms of reference to not include some of these other aspects that the community is very interested in. And that would include perhaps renovating our present arena at a lower cost than building new. What do you see with respect to all of this? Is this a genuine concern? We had, I think, 6 councillors who wanted to have more discussion. However, 6 others, and the mayor said, no, let's shut it down and move ahead. We have enough information. And this seems to be causing a lot of consternation. What is your feeling with respect to this?
Well, quite frankly, democracy is being subverted. If you have something that your council is split 50-50 on based on the information available, then instead of burying it and moving on, what the council should be doing is saying, hey, whoa, we don't have a consensus here. 50% vote is not a majority. We need to get the information these other people are looking for in order to break that logjam. And unless we do that, we are subverting democracy, because those other 6 counselors represent 50% of the population. Now, there seems to be a feeling among some counselors, the ones that are proponents of the KED, that well, they're the majority because they voted to go with the KED, and they voted to kill the discussion, and there was 6 plus the mayor, so that represents a majority. No, it doesn't. Only 6 people represented their constituents. The mayor represents no constituents. 6 other people represented their constituents. That tells me there's a 50-50 tie in the community amongst the constituents, because I do believe that these counselors do represent the constituents that talk to them. Therefore, I don't criticize them, but what I do say is, if half of your constituents are not sure of the information they got, then you better get them the information and get to maybe an 8-4 vote instead of a 6-6 vote. And it's just out of order.
Well, talking about information, and I think that perhaps our counselors could have been a little more questioning with respect to expenses. And one of the groups I belong to, Friendly to Senior Sudbury, did ask for freedom of information regarding expenses related to the Kingsway Entertainment District. And we had, as a result of the freedom of information, many pages of expenses. Now, somewhat convoluted, and an accountant actually looked at this, a certified public accountant, a CA, looked at this and said it was really, I don't know the exact term, but he said it was inadequate. However, some certain interesting articles with respect to this freedom of information. I'll give you just one example here. Scoreboard for the Sudbury Arena at $39,921. So why was this an expense for the KED, the scoreboard for the Sudbury Arena? There's a number of others. Now, what I'm concerned about is that instead of giving an analysis of what was spent on an ongoing basis, and the counselors asking for this analysis, all that they got from the individual, the staff person who's responsible for the project, was a total at various meetings of council, and upwards of over $2 million has been spent already. But at no time, and I've been on many boards and committees and that sort of thing, and generally, you know, when there's expenses, we ask for an accounting of those expenses on a regular basis. You know, not just a total, but an explanation of where, you know, what were these expenses? What are these additional funds of $2,000 here, or purchase of something or other for $127,000? What were these items? Why were they then not examined? Why were they not a question on a regular basis? Or were counselors shut down and not able to ask these questions? I think as an ordinary citizen, I'm just a little concerned. I want some more answers. What's your feeling on this, Tom?
Well, I don't think you need more answers. You need to have some answers. You have had no answers. You sent me a copy of that information, and there are no answers in that information. 4 years into a project and having expended around $5 million on it, there should be a monthly cost report comparing what is being spent to what the budget was for those costs. You did not get that. You didn't even come close to that. The counselors should be getting a monthly cost report on that project. In my career, I've had anywhere from 15 to 35, maybe even 40 projects on the go at one time. Every one of those projects had a monthly report. Every month, what have we spent? How does that compare to what we had budgeted? Where are we in the project time-wise? Are we behind schedule? Are we on schedule? We've seen none of that. Absolutely none. And people are going to say, well, we haven't spent $5 million. Well, yes, we have. We have made the first loan payment back to the bank on the bullet debenture. We have made the first payment to the sinking fund on it. Those are expenses against our tax dollars for this year. That comes out of our taxation this year. So we have spent that money, whether we've used it for the KED or not, we've spent it. We paid the bank their interest. Okay. That doesn't show up anywhere in the reports that you sent me.
No, and it doesn't indicate either. I understand that there's supposed to be some cost sharing with the
Right.
developer and the other partners, and that doesn't seem to indicate in here either. So whether or not we're going to ask for some more further clarification on this, or indeed council, those are our representatives. They should have the opportunity to ask some of these questions. I would think during a council meeting, so that you know, they have. I served as chair of the Sudbury Board of Education, the Rainbow, and you know, we had questions all the time with respect to our financial the financial staff persons as to what the money was being spent on, and this doesn't seem to happen around our council table with our tax dollars.
No. The other aspect of it, of course, is we keep hearing about the casino or the hotel and the developer. Well, who's building the casino and who's building the hotel? Are they looking for a developer to build those? Because typically the casino will rent their facilities. They will rent their housing. So somebody else has to build the casino building. Who's doing that? Where is the commitment by those two groups to this project? 4 years into the project, we still have no letter of intent on either of those. Better yet, we have no surety bond. And an surety bond is an insurance policy that the developer takes out, that we, if they don't fulfill their commitment to this project, if and when it goes ahead, we collect that surety bond as a city. There is none. If we go ahead, don't go ahead, they get to keep that surety bond.
Right.
What happens if they default? Well, the insurance company pays the city the full value of that bond, and they recover their costs from the developer. That's up to them then. They guaranteed it. They gave the policy. We don't have that at all. The only commitment we've got is the city spending money. We don't even have a commitment to the full project. I've never, and I don't think anybody has ever seen a monthly report on the KED.
No,
Why not?
no, that's true. I certainly haven't. I've been following it fairly closely. We know, going through that figures here, we see that there's been a number of stormwater studies done to the account of, or the amount of some almost 97, almost $100,000. And yet we don't know that, you know, anything about this. So I imagine that might be covered in a site plan eventually. But we also have the report from the Ramsey Lake Subwatershed Study that says that there's no mitigation methods possible, that this property is being built on a recharge area for one of our largest drinking water sources in the city, and it's just not a good idea. But getting to, we mentioned it earlier on, and I mentioned the term witch hunt and maybe a smoke screen or something. And I'm not saying this is a conspiracy theory, but you know, this with respect to, you know, ordinary citizens, including yourself, and also councillors over a period of, well, several years, have been subject to a degree of harassment. And the Integrity Commissioner has been called in on a couple of occasions, and has been called in recently due to an anonymous report to the Integrity Commission regarding some of the statements made by Councillor Jerry Montpellier, based on some media reports. Now, as I said, I'm not saying this is a conspiracy theory or something, but I have used the term witch hunt and I've had to use the term smokescreen. But really, is this a tempest in a teapot? What is going on here, Tom?
Well, I can't swear or prove anything, but what I can do is give you my interpretation. There is a definite pattern now of harassment of Councillor Montpelier. It started with the optimization plan for fire services, in which 4 private citizens, and councillors are private citizens, okay? 2 councillors, Montpelier and Bagnini, myself as a private citizen, and a gentleman named Travis Morgan as a private citizen, were all investigated illegally and harassed with that investigation for a year. A full year of harassment on an illegal investigation. That found that Jerry Montpelier had used the words empire building. Sole finding of that whole investigation. Well, excuse me, but has anybody heard of Bill Gates and his empire building? Or Elon Musk with Tesla empire building? Or any of the, well, locally, Paul Demerara built an empire. So that empire thing was just, as you suggest, a smokescreen. Then in 2019, the Integrity Commissioner was called in to adjudicate against Jerry for supposedly sharing in-camera information and for writing a letter to the Prime Minister. The in-camera information he shared, he didn't share. It was public knowledge well before Jerry mentioned anything. That was taken off the table. But the Integrity Commissioner wouldn't let loose of the letter to the Prime Minister. And I can assure you, having helped Jerry write that letter to the Prime Minister, he never solicited help from anyone for that letter, asking them to interfere in the harassment that was taking place. He never even implied that the harassment was against himself. He was more concerned about the harassment against staff and against council. And I can attest to that. I'm willing to swear under oath because I helped him write it. Okay. All he ever did was state facts and congratulate the Prime Minister on taking swift action to stop harassment at the federal level, period. Any interpretation of that letter towards him trying to do something harmful was pure conjecture in the minds of the accusers and of the Integrity Commissioner. I can assure you of that. Now, once again, and Jerry was not sanctioned by, they gave him a slap in the hand, but he wasn't sanctioned by the council for his comments, okay? Now, here we are again, this time with an anonymous complaint, apparently to an anonymous bearer of the complaint to the Integrity Commissioner. So we got an anonymous complaint going to an anonymous transfer to the Integrity Commissioner, which is strictly prohibited in the Code of Conduct. The complaint has to go directly to the Integrity Commissioner. So you have to ask, why did he accept this secondhand one? Secondly, the complainant has to sign the complaint application. So how does the Integrity Commissioner say that it's anonymous? If they didn't sign the complaint, it's an invalid complaint according to the Code of Conduct. So what is this all about then? And I read through his report that's on the agenda and I look at it and I say, well, what is this about? He's referring to professional firefighter staff. We don't have any professional firefighters on staff. Professional implies your job, your work. If we have a career firefighter who's been promoted to staff, he is no longer a professional firefighter. His work now is a staff worker. So where does this, why is he using the word professional? By the way, Wembley, Alberta has a volunteer professional firefighters association or department.
Right.
Okay, so they have professional firefighters as a department. When they are fighting fires, they are professionals in their job. They are qualified as a class 1 or 2 firefighter, the same as here in our volunteers. So his very report is a slam in the face of the volunteer firefighters. He's referring to our professionals, but our volunteers are professionals in the same right. Now, add to that, in the last complaint about Jerry, the integrity commissioner referred to article 14.2, then quoted 14.3. He's done the same thing again. 14.2 is an innocuous statement about policy, etc. But 14.3 outlines a criminal act, slander, and that type of thing. By the code of conduct, the integrity commissioner cannot hear that. He is supposed to turn that over to police if it's a criminal act. Well, certainly everything defined in 14.3 is criminal. So what is he doing? Did he just use 14.2 as a reference so people would read 14.2 and say, oh, okay. And then he used the words from 14.3 to inflame them? Is he now harassing Councillor Montpelier even more? Like, what's going on with this guy?
I don't know. This you have today, this is July the 8th, and you have a letter to the editor, a column in the opinion section of the Sudbury Star, and you've outlined some of the things you mentioned just now. But just going back to this anonymous individual, does not don't you have a right to know your accuser?
Absolutely. The code of conduct says that the integrity commissioner is supposed to provide the accused with a copy of the complaint, and that complaint has to be signed when it's submitted. Now, he can ask that the complainant's name not be revealed, but if he didn't reveal that name to the accused, he's in violation of the code of conduct himself. Okay, the integrity commissioner. Okay, so where's this guy coming from? Like, here we go again with more harassment of a very high quality counselor. And I probably shouldn't say this, but having worked with a number of these counselors, Councillor Montpelier is right up there with the best of them when it comes to knowing his job and knowing his business. He is not a slacker. He doesn't sit back and wait for things to happen. He works for his people. That's the job of a counselor.
It seems that we also have a sort of a situation that we appear to have a divided council. We seem to have those that want some more answers and are questioning, and it seems like others, and perhaps the mayor as well too, prefer to shut things down and to move ahead to what they consider is to be an agenda in the interest of the citizens. What's your stand on this?
We pay our counselors to question everything that goes on. That's what we pay them for. If they're not questioning, then they're not doing the job that we pay them for. They are supposed to check on what's happening with the staff, what's happening with management in the city, and make sure that they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. This latest report from PricewaterhouseCoopers, staff did not do what was promised in the previous meeting and requested. The counselors who are asking for conciliation on what took place there are right. Those who are saying, oh no, we can just bury that. It says that the Kingsway is better than the downtown. That wasn't the question that was asked. That's just confusing the public. So those who are asking the questions are doing the job we pay them for. What can I say beyond that?
Very true. When you're looking at, we talked about pros and cons with respect to the KED and downtown, and you have previously, I think going back over a year ago, provide a matrix comparing both the downtown and the KED. And this is all, people can view it on our website, friendlysudbury.ca. And it's very detailed. Tom, you did an excellent job on this, but it appears that some of this information is not coming forward. And most of the citizens that I've talked to, outside of those that just say, we're sick of it all and we need to get something done, we don't care what it is, just do something. But most really do want to have a more detailed look. If you're spending, hundreds of millions of dollars, it seems like as private citizens, when we're spending money on some of our own projects, we like to be more detailed to make sure we're not making a mistake, that we're just getting the best value for our money. And really, I think this is just all we're asking of council, rather than this push by some that we've spent enough time, we just have to go ahead and do it. And we see the expenses, which are very questionable in certain areas, and it seems like we need to have more. We only have a couple more minutes left, but what direction should we be taking now with respect to council and these general citizen concerns?
Well, the first thing, I think the citizens have to be very concerned about the true cost of these projects. And that has never been stated by the city. The true, and basically in financial evaluations, you talk about return on investment and net present value. What is the net present value of these projects? And that has to include interest, taxation rates, and everything else. But right now, the downtown arena, with interest rates and that included, comes to about 100 million over 30 years. That's the total cost of it. The KED over the next 30 years is going to cost us 200 million plus. Everybody needs to ask themselves, is that arena on the Kingsway worth that extra $100 million? Because that's what it's going to cost us. We're paying the bank half of that. For what? Not for any solid assets. We're paying that in interest to borrow the money. It's for the use of money. So is it worth paying $100 million for the use of money when we could have the same thing for 100 million less? So citizens have to ask themselves that, and they haven't been doing that. So the next stage is for the citizens to say, hey, whoa, we've got $100 million stake in this investment. Get the answers.
You're right on. So, and in the background there, I've just shown Ramsey Lake, and we mentioned there before that the city sponsored and provincially paid for a watershed study said that building the KED on this property would probably harm drinking water for 50 to 60,000 people. So this is something that seems to be almost completely ignored. We've tried to bring that up on occasion, but it seems that development always seems to have preference over the environment, and it's something that really citizens should be certainly aware of. Well, Tom, it's been great having you with us here again on this July the 8th. We could go on for quite some time, but we're almost out of time.
Do we have another minute?
We have one more minute. We have one more minute left.
Okay, I'd just like to comment on the salt that will be added in the parking lot.
Yeah.
If anybody's been following the situation in Israel, they've just proceeded with a multi-million-dollar desalination plant to provide water for their people. If our salt continues to grow here, we will end up needing a desalination plant for Ramsey Lake. That for Ramsey Lake water would cost us in the order of 100 million on top of the KED. So when I talk about 200 million for the KED, if that salt ends up further contaminating our water here, it'll be 300 million in order to have safe drinking water.
A lot of good questions that need to be answered, and we expect our councillors as our representatives to be asking some of these questions, and in the interest of what the mayor used to say, transparency. It seems that seems to be lacking somewhat, and it's something that we as ordinary citizens and taxpayers need to, I use the word demand, of
Yeah.
those that we have elected, and not to wait, for another 500 days until our next election.
Right. You're right.
Thank you very much, Tom. We'll talk again.
Okay, take
Bye
care.
for
And
now.
thank you, John.